So let's talk a little bit about layout. So we're going to be spending the next couple weeks talking about layout and all of its different and all the different things that it touches. But I wanted to start off just by showing you some of these patterns that we often see. Over here, we're going to see a pretty regular layout with a header area, a navigation for the menu, two sections of content, a sidebar, and a footer. This one and this one we will be creating with in this class. But I wanted to show you also how responsive design comes into play here when you're first thinking about the layout of your website, thinking about the structure of your HTML. In order to create a dynamic modern website, you want to keep in mind how you are setting up your areas for content and how flexible they are to be rearranged in different configurations as your screen size gets smaller. So if you look over here, there's a pretty fancy large scale desktop design where the content all has a lot of room to breathe and it's all kind of spaced out. And as you get smaller for the tablet size, things start to lock more into place. There's less real estate. And that was a decision made by the designer that was anticipating this lack of space. And then finally, in mobile, everything is just very cleanly, very logically stacked together on top of each other. And that's the trick, anticipating what the flow of the website is going to be in all of these different screen sizes. To show you some examples, I have a couple really complicated layouts where in the past we had just these kind of blocks, and they have these words in them, main, banner, but what does that really mean? These are pretty traditional, but ultimately all that layout is where you are designing different ways to present your content, and you can be as creative or as functional as possible. If I can show you some creative options. So we have here a design by Jen Simmons, and as you can see on the upper right hand corner, we have a sidebar, well, more like a navigation menu right here, where if you get smaller, hold on, you can see that this is snapping into place right about there. So there's a consideration for smaller screens, but in this case, the only thing that's moving is that sidebar, which is pretty cool. Also by Jen Simmons is this design where we're still presenting our content in boxes, so to speak, but the boxes are spread out and they kind of replicate a poster layout, which is really cool. What you can achieve with web design, where you can emulate this kind of a poster or live physical object style, where everything's kind of spread out and very large. Also by Jen Simmons, who's really a creative genius when it comes to layout and CSS education in general. We have some modern art that's been placed into divs and also responds responsively to changes in screen size. Imagine each one of these blocks, although you would be hard pressed to come up with an information that needs to be expressed in this abstract way, but each one of these blocks represents a different content area, and they jockey for position as you get smaller. Pretty cool. Here's a list of, well, actually this one is a pretty simple design, and see if you can detect the patterns already, right? If we're only talking about boxes, we know that this box is about 1/3 of the page, and this one is 2/3. And then the pattern here is more simple. Each one has an equivalent amount of space, say 33% each one. Again, with the same pattern from up top, where there is 1/3 followed by 2/3, and then flipped in reverse with 2/3 and then 1/3. Again, you decide how you want your information to be presented, and it can follow these kinds of patterns, but ultimately you're just putting things in their spots. One last example I want to show you is this really nice website. Ooh, I didn't see the scroll button before. Cool. You can tell that it was designed with mobile first in mind. It's a website for a podcast, and most podcasts are listened to on the phone. So the design is actually really, the design is really important for the phone, and if it just so happens to look okay with desktop, that's fine too. So a lot of effort was placed into making this look great on the phone, And as you extend, you see that it doesn't even change that much. It just gets a little bit larger, and there's lots of space on the right and left. It's really cool is this effect up here where the image is in front of this text and it just fades out. Very cool. Also highly recommend this podcast if you're into podcasts. And I got a couple more examples here for you just to see some different kinds of layouts and how they work. We will be making things like this in this class, and we're going to be thinking about how we create the boxes, what we label them as, and how they behave with CSS. It's kind of a combination of everything we've done so far, and it's going to spread out into all of our future lessons for the rest of the course. In the future, we are going to be getting into the nitty-gritty of how to create these elements. And we're going to take a break here and come back with the next one and start talking about some new tags, some new concepts, and hopefully create some of these early patterns to get you started in the world of CSS layout.